Chapter 6, Imagery and Trial. Toward the end of the Vedic age of human life, a great discovery began to take place. A discovery unparalleled over the whole course of the history of human civilizations on the earth. Footnote: this chapter is a continuation of Anastasia's narrative on the history of mankind, which, with one or two interruptions, carries through to the end of chapter 8. People became acutely aware of the power of collective thought. And here we must clarify, what exactly is the thought of man? The thought of man is an energy unparalleled anywhere in space. It is capable of creating marvelous worlds, on the one hand, or, on the other, weapons capable of destroying the planet. And all the matter that we see today, without exception, has been created by thought. Nature, the animal kingdom, man himself, have all been created with great inspiration by the divine thought. And the proliferation of artificial objects, machines, and mechanical devices which we see today are the creations of man's thought. You may think that it is man's hand that has produced them. Yes, today hands must be employed, but to begin with, everything down to the last detail is created by thought. It is believed today that man's thought is more perfect now than in the past, but this is far from being the case. For each member of the Vedic civilization, it was many millions of times superior to that of modern man in terms of the speed and fullness of information it involved. This can be seen in the knowledge we have taken from the past about using plants for medicines and food. But nature's devices are far more perfect and complex than anything artificial. It was not just that man summoned a whole lot of beasts to serve him. It was not just a case of defining the function of all growing things. Once he realized the power of collective thought, he found that he could use it to control even the weather, or cause springs to well up from the depths of the earth. If he were not careful in handling his thought, he could make a bird fall from the sky while in flight, or affect the life on distant stars, either to plant gardens on them, or to utterly destroy them. This is no fiction, but in fact, it was given to mankind. It was all given to mankind. Everybody today knows how man, having launched himself on the path of technocracy, has been attempting to build spaceships capable of reaching the stars. People have gone to the moon, but only by wasting valuable resources and energies and with great harm to the earth. But they have changed nothing on the moon. This kind of approach is short-sighted. It is doomed to failure, and it is dangerous for everyone on the earth as well as for the other planets. There is another approach which is much more effective. Through thought alone, it is possible to grow a flower on the moon, to create an atmosphere capable of supporting human life, plant a garden there, and find oneself with one's beloved in that garden, in the flesh. But before that can happen, thought must transform the whole earth into a flourishing paradise garden, and that has to be done through collective thinking. Collective thought is indeed powerful. In the whole universe, there is no energy that can interfere with its operation. Matter and today's technology are the reflection of collective thought. It is this collective thought that has invented all the mechanical devices and armaments that we have today. But remember, I was saying that in those Vedic times, every living man's thought had far greater power and energy than now. Objects such as rocks weighing many tons could be moved by as few as 9 people gathered together. To make it easier to use collective thought for the benefit of the majority without wasting time getting a whole lot of people to congregate in one place, people invented images of various gods and began to control nature with their help. The sun god appeared in its own imagery, likewise the gods of fire, rain, love, and fertility. Everything needed for life was created by people through images on which human thought was concentrated. It performed many useful acts. Rain, for example, was necessary for watering the ground, and so one person directed his thought just to the image of the rain god. When rain was really essential, then a whole lot of people concentrated their energy on the image of rain. When enough energy had been accumulated in the image, the clouds gathered and the rain fell, watering the harvests. Unlimited opportunity has been given to man by the divine nature. If mankind could only overcome the temptations associated with unlimited authority and hold all the energies of the universe in perfect balance within themselves, then gardens, as the fruit of human thought, would appear in other galaxies, and man would be capable of happifying other worlds with his thought. What is now the age of the image was now coming into bloom. In it, man not only created, but felt himself to be a god, with a lowercase g. But then, what else could the Son of God, a capital G, turn out to be? In what is called the age of the image, man exists in the likeness of God and begins to create his own images. This period lasts 9,000 years, and God does not interfere in man's deeds. All the diverse energies of the universe are set in motion and actively try to seduce man. Particles of all the diverse energies of the universe are to be found in man. They exist in great numbers and play opposite roles. But all the particles of the diverse energies of the universe ought to be perfectly balanced in man, brought together in a harmonious whole. If one of these particles dominates, the rest are denigrated and their harmony is disrupted, and then the earth is transformed and becomes inharmonious. Images can lead people to a many splendored creation, but if their inner unity is surrendered, they can also lead to annihilation. But what exactly is an image? An image is an entity of energy invented by human thought. It can be created by a single man or by several together. A clear example of the collective creation of an image may be seen in stage acting. One man describes the image on paper, while another portrays the described image on the stage. What happens to the actor who portrays the image invented? For a time, the actor exchanges his own feelings, aspirations, and desires for those inherent in the invented image. In the process, the actor may change the way he walks, change his facial expression, or his usual clothing. In this way, the invented image acquires a temporary embodiment. The ability to create images is something only man is endowed with. The image created by man can remain in space only so long as it is held in man's thought, either by a single man or by several at once. The greater number of people feeding the image with their feelings, the stronger it becomes. The image created by the collective thought can possess colossal destructive or creative potential. It has a reciprocal connection with people and is capable of shaping character and behavior on the part of groups of people, both large and small. In exploiting the great possibilities they have discovered within themselves, people became carried away with creating the life of the planet. But it happened back in the early stages of the age of the image in the life of man that there were 6 people, just 6, who found themselves unable to hold within their bodies, hearts, and mind the balance of those energies of the universe which God gave to man upon creating him. Perhaps they needed to make their appearance to test all of mankind. At first, it was just one of the 6 that the energy of grandeur and self-importance predominated, then in another, then in a third, and then finally in all 6. They did not meet together at first. Each one lived independently, but like attracts like. They ended up concentrating their thought on how to become masters of all the people of the earth. There were 6 of them, and in public they referred to themselves as priests. Through the process of reincarnating themselves over the centuries, they are still living to this day. Today, all the peoples of the earth are governed. Today, all the peoples of the earth are governed by just 6 people. These are the priests. Their dynasties are 10,000 years old. From generation to generation, they have been transmitting their knowledge of the occult to their heirs, along with the science of imagery, which was also partially known to them. They have taken great pains to hide the Vedic knowledge from other people. Among the 6, there is one who considered himself chief, and he is called the High Priest. Today he considers himself to be the chief ruler of human society. Through a few sentences I have uttered, which you have recorded in your books, as well as through the reaction of many people to them, the High Priest has begun to suspect who I really am. Just in case he attempted to destroy me by using a negligible amount of power. He did not succeed. He was surprised, and he tried again, applying a greater amount of force, still not completely convinced of who I am. Now that I have uttered the word Vedras, thereby exposing myself completely, the current High Priest living on the earth today is afraid even of the word Vedras. You can just imagine how shaken he is, since he knows what lies behind it. Now he will muster his soldiers, bio-robots to a man, along with the forces of all the dark occult sciences, to bring about my termination, and he himself will be working minute by minute on a plan of annihilation. Let him do that. It means he will not have time to be busy with his other plans. You were telling me about the angry attacks in the recent press, Vladimir. Now you will see them intensify even more, and they will be even more cunning and sophisticated. You will see slander and provocation. You will see the whole arsenal of devices which the dark forces have been using over the millennia to bring about the devastation of our people's culture. But what you will see at the beginning is only the tip of the iceberg. Not all people can witness the occult attacks at first hand, but you will understand them, you will feel them, and you will see them. Do not be afraid of them, I beg of you. What is fearsome is powerless to affect a fearless man. Whatever you see, you should forget immediately and forever. No matter how omnipotent a monster may seem, once it is forgotten, it ceases to exist altogether. This is an unusual fact, and I can tell you are doubting. Do not be hasty to give in to your doubts. Think it over calmly. After all, even a small group of people who have gathered together for the purpose of building something inevitably has a leader. We may call him a ruler. A small enterprise has an official in charge. A large enterprise has several people in charge under a chief executive officer. There are many rulers over all sorts of territories which are known by different names: provinces, regions, states, communities, republics, etc. The particular name is not important, but each nation has a ruler who is aided by a whole host of assistants. The ruler of a nation, is that the limit? That is what people often think. Does that mean nobody is governing the whole human society living on the earth? And are there no claimants wishing to ascend the throne of the earth? There indeed have been claimants. CLAIMANTS. There still are. You know from recent history many names of military commanders who have tried to dominate the world by force, but not one of them has ever succeeded in taking power over the world. Whenever they found themselves close to seizing universal authority, something would inevitably happen, resulting in the destruction of both the pretender to world dominance and his army. And the nation aspiring to world domination, which before had been considered strong and flourishing, suddenly dropped to the level of a run-of-the-mill state. That is the way it has always happened over the past 10,000 years. But why? All because there is already a secret ruler in the world, and it has been for a long time. He toys with nations and their rulers, along with individual people. He calls himself the high priest of the whole earth, which his 5 assistants refer to themselves as priests. Consider one other fact, Vladimir. Think about how in various parts of the earth over the millennia, wars between people have never ceased. In every country, crime, disease, and various disasters are increasing day by day, but there has been a strict, indeed the strictest, prohibition on discussing a particular question. Is human civilization really on the path of progress, or is human society being further degraded with each passing day? There can be but one simple answer to this question. Only first take a look and see how the priests acquired their authority and how they have managed to maintain it to date. Their first step, leading to the accomplishment of their secret purpose, was the creation of the Egyptian state. The Egyptian state is more familiar than others to historians of today, but once you eliminate personal commentary and mysticism and only look at the facts, you will be able to uncover many secrets. Fact number 1. History calls the pharaoh the supreme ruler of Egypt, and the many military achievements and defeats of the pharaohs of old have been well documented. Even today, their magnificent tombs astound the imagination and prompt scholars to probe the mysteries they hold. Nevertheless, the grandeur of the pyramids distracts us from the most important secret of all. Not only were the pharaohs considered as rulers over the people, but they were worshipped as gods. It was to them that people turned with pleas for an auspicious crop year, pleas for rain, and an absence of pernicious winds. History can tell us about many of the factual accomplishments of the pharaohs, but after learning all these historical facts, you should ask yourself, could any of the pharaohs really have been a ruler over a large nation state, let alone a god over the people? And once you weigh all the evidence, you will realize entirely on your own that the pharaoh was nothing more than a bio-robot in the hands of the priests. Now here are the facts, and they are also known to us from history. During the age of the pharaohs, there also existed priests in magnificent temples, and one of them was the high priest. There were always several candidates for the pharaohship in the training under their supervision. The priests would inculcate in the young boys whatever the priests desired, among them the notion that the pharaoh was chosen by God. Along with this, they told him that the high priest himself could hear God speaking to him in a secret temple. Later, the priests would decide which of the candidates would become the next pharaoh. And so the day of the coronation arrived. The new pharaoh, clothed in special robes and holding the symbols of office in his hands, took his place majestically on the throne. In the eyes of the people, he was an omnipotent king, a god. Only the priests knew that it was their own bio-robot that sat on the throne. And having studied this pharaoh's character from his childhood, they knew exactly how he would rule. They knew what gifts he would offer up to the benefit of the priesthood. There was the occasional attempt on the part of certain pharaohs to come out from under the high priest's authority, but none of them ever succeeded in becoming a free man. After all, the power of the priests was just as invisible as the pharaoh's royal robes were visible to all. You see, the priest's authority did not require any verbal proclamation or manifestation or manifest communication for its enforcement. After all, in exercising their power over any individual ruler, the priests did not relent, even for a moment, and it was exercised over the masses in turn with the aid of invented suggestions as to what constitutes the order of the universe. If only the pharaoh could have liberated himself from the images inculcated in him by the priests and reflect by himself in peace, perhaps he would have been able to become a real man. But there was no way the pharaoh could free himself from the day-to-day cares and concerns. This had been part of the plan right from the start. And what concerns there were! Couriers, scribes, local governors by turns brought in a daily flood of information from all over the vast nation, situations calling for immediate solutions. And then a war would break out, absorbing the ruler's full attention, and the pharaoh would take his chariot and keep following his daily trajectories, respecting or rejecting the deeds of his subjects, often not getting enough sleep himself. The priest, on the other hand, would spend his time quietly reflecting, and in this lay his greatest advantage. The priest directed his efforts to gaining single-handed control of the world as a whole. And even more than that, he meditated on how to resurrect his own world, distinct from the world God had created. And did he care in the least about the stupid boy pharaoh, not to mention the crowds which were subject to the pharaoh? For the priest, they were all merely toys. The priest studied the science of imagery in secret, while the masses of people remembered less and less about the law of nature. It was these priests, Vladimir, who channeled the energy of the interaction between people and the living deity with a capital D, the creations of nature, into the temples they had invented. They fed on it, the energy of the people, giving nothing in return. What had been surely clear to everyone in the age of the Vedic culture now became obscure and surreptitious, 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 I don't know. The people became stupefied and, as though they were under a hypnotic spell, unthinkingly followed the commands in a kind of semi-sleep. They began to destroy the world of the divine nature, while building an artificial world for the priests' benefit. The priests held their science under their strictest secretive control. They did not even dare write it down on scrolls. They invented a language of their own for communication with each other, and this is a fact you can also learn from history. They needed a different language, lest somebody should inadvertently overhear their conversation with each other and become party to their secrets. And so even today, these simple truths, which have now become shrouded in a cloak of secrecy, are passed down to new generations of the priesthood. 6,000 years ago, the high priest, one of the six, decided to take control of the entire world. He reasoned as follows: there is no way I can seize power by military force with the pharaoh's armies, even if I taught the commanders how to make use of weapons more advanced than others possess. Besides, what could an army of raving, mindless dullards do? Go and plunder gold, but there is so much of that as it is. There are slaves aplenty, but there is an unfavorable energy emanating from them, and it would not be proper to accept food from the hands of a slave. The food would be savorless and harmful to health. I must bring human souls into subjection and direct all their love and their tremulous affection back to myself. But in this case, it is not an army that is needed, but scientific thought, the science of imagery. That is my invisible army. The deeper I become acquainted with it, the more faithfully this army ought to serve me. The less that is known by the crowd, immersed as it is in occultism and unreality, the more it will be in subjugation to me. The high priest devised his plan. Even today, it finds its reflection in the historical events of the past 6,000 years. You and everyone else are aware of recent events. The only difference is in their interpretation. But you should try and give your own, and then the truth will be made known to you. Look and see. There in the council of those 6 priests, the plan was laid out and was later revealed to many. It is mentioned in the Bible and the Old Testament. By order of the high priest, the priest Moses led the Jewish people out of Egypt. The people were offered a most marvelous life in the promised land, prepared by God especially for them. The Jewish people were declared to be God's chosen ones. The tempting news set minds afire, and a part of the people followed Moses, who for 40 years led his people about from region to region in the wilderness. The priest's assistants constantly preached sermons about their being a chosen people and inspired the people to make war and plunder cities, all in his, God's, name. If anyone should happen to awake from this psychosis and demand a return to his former life, he was declared a sinner, to be reformed, and given a deadline by which he had to be reformed. If he failed to do this, he would be killed. The priests acted not in their own names, but by pretending they were carrying out the deeds of God. What I am telling you is no fantasy or dream. This may be clearly seen by everyone for themselves by looking for answers in the Old Testament of the Bible, a great historical book. A reliable portrayal of historical events can be learnt by anyone who wakes at least a little from the millennia-old hypnotic sleep and reads how and by what means the Jewish people were programmed and turned into troops of the priesthood. Later, Jesus tried to deprogram his people and to use his manifest gift for acquiring new wisdom to prevent the priests from carrying out their designs. In his journeys among wise men, he endeavored to glean inklings into the science of imagery, and after he had learnt a great many truths, he decided to save the Jewish people, his own people. He succeeded in creating his own religion, one which could serve as a counterbalance to the terror. His religion was not for all the nations upon the earth. It was intended only for the Jewish people. He himself mentioned this more than once. His words were written down by his disciples, and you can still read them to date. See, for example, St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 15, verses 22 through 28. I don't know how to pronounce these words. Please forgive me. A Canaanite, Canaanite, woman from that vicinity came to him, crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is suffering terribly from demon possession." Jesus did not answer a word, so his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." What does it mean, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel"? Why are Jesus' teachings only for the Jews? Why did he consider the Jewish people to be lost? I tell you, Vladimir, Jesus knew that as a result of the 40-year programming in the Sinai wilderness, the majority of the Jewish people were lost in a hypnotic dream. This part of the people, as, indeed, Moses himself, thus became a tool in the hands of the high priest. They were his foot soldiers, whom he compelled to seize power over all the earth's people to satisfy his own vainglory. And they will be running their battles in various parts of the earth for thousands of years. Their weapons will not be primitive swords or bullets, but cunning, and the creation of a way of life subjecting all the world's peoples into occultism. In other words, to the selfishness of the priests, and they will do whatever it takes. But any battle presupposes the presence of two opposing sides, you may be well thinking. And if so, then where are the victims? In any battle, there have to be victims on both sides. You could probably find evidence of these battles yourself through searching by the dates mentioned in the various historical sources. But to make it easier for you to locate these fearful dates, I shall cite just a few of them right now. If you wish, you can look up their historical confirmation for yourself. Everybody knows today, including you, Vladimir, how children and elderly people are perishing from terrorism in Israel. It was not all that long ago that what you call the Great Patriotic War took place. Footnote, Great Patriotic War, the common Russian term used to refer to the events of the Second World War that directly involved Russia or the Soviet Union. And it is well documented how, during that war, the Jews, old people and children, mothers and young pregnant women, young men who had not yet known love, were systematically burnt in ovens, poisoned with gas, and buried alive in common graves. Not just one person, not 100, not mere thousands, but millions of people were brutally slain during this brief period. Historians lay the blame squarely on Hitler. But who was to blame back in 1113 in Kievan Rus, when popular hatred of the Jews suddenly boiled over? Footnote, Kievan Rus, the name given to the East Slavic state dominated by the city of Kiev between 880 and the mid-12th century. Jewish houses in Kiev and other parts of Rus were plundered and burnt, while Jews, even children, were killed. The people of Rus, caught up by a brutal rage, were even ready to topple the ruling princes from their thrones. And when the princes gathered together within council, they decided to pass a law expelling all Jews from the whole territory of Rus and henceforth letting none in. It was an order given to rob and kill anyone who surreptitiously entered therein. In 1290, there was a sudden move to the effect of physical extermination of all Jews in England. The rulers were obliged to eject the whole Jewish population from the country. In 1492, Jewish pogroms began in Spain. A threat of physical annihilation hung over all Jews living in Spain, and once again they were obliged to leave the land. Right from the moment when the Jews left the Sinai wilderness, they became a target of hatred by peoples of various countries. The hatred kept increasing, and here and there manifested itself in cruel pogroms and murders. I have cited just a few dates of these fearful pogroms, ones that you can easily verify for yourself in histories people have written down. There have been many more conflicts besides for the Jewish people. Any one of them, by itself, is naturally not as significant as the instances everybody knows about. But when the range of small-scale conflicts is examined as a whole, it takes on an unprecedented scale and proportion, perhaps the most extreme of all and the most terrifying phenomena in human history. If something like that has happened throughout the millennia, one could conclude that the Jewish people are to be blamed in people's eyes. But what are they to be blamed for? Historians, both ancient and modern, have said that the Jewish people have conspired against authority, that they have aspired to deceive everyone, from the least unto the greatest, in the case of the poor, to try and trick them out of at least a little. In the case of the poor, to try to trick them out of at least a little. In the case of the rich, to bring them to utter ruin. And this is evidenced by the fact that among the Jews there are many wealthy people capable of influencing governments. But there is one question you should ask yourself. How righteous are the ones who have been deceived by the Jews, the ones that had amassed such wealth. Did they acquire it all by honest means? As for those condemned to be in authority, can we believe them to be so smart if they could be so easily deceived? Besides, most rulers are dependent on someone else, as the Jews have demonstrated quite clearly. One could go exploring this topic for a long time, but the answer is simple. In the occult world, everybody lives by deceit. Then, should we only condemn the one who has succeeded in achieving more than the rest? Footnote: Vladimir Megré has always emphasized in his writings and public speeches that any individual should be judged by his actions and not by his religion, ethnicity, nationality, or race. The raising of the Jewish question in this chapter is aimed solely at exposing the roots of, and thus helping to alleviate, the inter-ethnic conflict and the anti-Semitic feelings so prevalent in today's Russia and elsewhere in the world. See also Book 7, Chapter 16, to Jews, Christians, and others. And as far as the Jewish people are concerned, we could easily substitute any one of the other peoples we know today. Any one, if they were subjected to the same totally unprecedented programming as the Jews were during their 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, heeding only occultism and not seeing what had been created by God. Jesus tried to remove this programming and save his people. He came up with a new religion for them, one different from what they had before. For example, in contrast to the previous saying, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, he said, whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him also the other. Or turn to him the other also. Exodus 21:24, Matthew 5:38 and 39. In contrast to the verse which said, God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, he called his people the servants of God. Jesus could also have told the truth to his people. He could have told them about Vedic times, about how man was able to live happily in his domain, in contact with the creations of the Father Creator. But the Jewish people were already programmed. They believed only in occult deeds. Their consciousness was oppressed by the world of the unreal. And so Jesus decided to act in an occult manner himself. He founded an occult religion. The high priest at the time was able to guess Jesus' intention. The high priest racked his brain for many a year before he found what he considered to be the smartest solution. There is no point in fighting Jesus' teachings. Through the minds of the soldiers I have selected from among the Jews, I must spread them through all the peoples of the earth, while maintaining the old religion for Israel. And so it happened, exactly as the high priest had conceived. And two essentially different philosophies began to coexist. According to one, the Jews are a chosen people, as Moses taught, and all other people ought to be subject to them. According to the other, as expressed in Jesus' words, all are equal before God, and people should not try to take precedence over others. Instead, one should love one's neighbor, and even one's enemy. The priest realized that if the Christian religion, which calls everyone to love and humility, should succeed in spreading throughout the world, and at the same time Judaism, which elevates one over the rest, is preserved, the world would be subdued. While the world might bow before the Jews, they are but foot soldiers. The world would actually be bowing before the priest. And the priest's preachers went out into the world as earnest teachers of the new doctrine. The doctrine of Jesus? Not quite. The priest had by now added a great deal of his own teachings to it. What happened thereafter, you already know. Rome fell. It was not external foes, however, that destroyed the great empire. Rome was destroyed from the inside after adopting Christianity. The emperors were under the impression that Christianity would enhance their power and authority. They were quite flattered by one of the postulates, namely, that all power was derived from God, and that the ruler was ordained to the emperor's throne by God's grace. Footnote, compare Romans chapter 12, verse 1. There is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Authorized King James Version. In the 4th century AD, Christianity celebrated its victory in Rome, both officially and in actual fact. In great delight, the high priest gave a silent, non-contact command to the Byzantine emperor, and Christian Rome burnt the library of Alexandria to the ground. Footnote, the Library of Alexandria, the most famous library of antiquity, containing every single work in existence at the time. In Caesar's time, its collection numbered something on the order of 700,000 items. In 391 AD, during the time of bloody wars between the heathens and the Christians, the temple of Sepphoris, which housed the library, was destroyed. Altogether, 733,033 burned. Oh my God, sorry. Altogether, 700,033 volumes were lost. Bonfires of books and ancient scrolls burned in many cities. The burnt books were largely from the heathen period, but they also included the few that recorded the knowledge of the Vedic people. These were not burnt. They were salvaged, concealed, and studied in turn by a narrow circle of the devoted, and only afterward were destroyed. It seemed to the high priest that now the people were getting further and further away from a knowledge of their own pristine origins. He would encounter no more obstacles on his path. Feeling bolder, he issued yet another tacit command, resulting in an anathema being issued at the Second Council of Constantinople against the doctrine of reincarnation. Footnote, Second Council of Constantinople, also known as the Fifth Ecumenical, Council. An assembly held at the Constantinople, 5th of May to June 2nd, AD 553, summoned by the Byzantine Emperor Justinian and attended mainly by Eastern bishops. Its purpose was to head off contamination of official Christian doctrines by heretical Christian-based teachings such as reincarnation and Nestorianism, a belief in Jesus as two persons, human and divine. For what reason, you may ask? To keep people from thinking about the essence of earthly life. To keep them from thinking about a happy life. To keep them from thinking that a happy life exists only beyond the earth's borders. And many peoples of the earth began believing precisely that. The priest was truly delighted. He knew what would happen next. He construed that since nobody had experienced otherworldly life, man would have no idea of how to reach paradise, the good, or how to avoid ending up in a fearsome hell. So now he would offer to man a little occult hint which would favor his own plan. And so the priests have kept on giving out hints to the world which benefit themselves. But they were not able to immediately obtain full power over the world, even when it seemed to them that the strongest bastion of heathen culture, Rome, was destroyed. Even then, there still remained on the earth one small island which was impervious to the priests' usual charms. Even back before Rome, even before the appearance of Jesus' teachings, the high priest had aspired to destroy the culture of the last Vedic state, Rus.